You know who's just right, my man Bill Reiter. There he is. All right, William, Clippers win. It was not easy. It was not how we expected it. Road team wins the first 6 games, and the Clippers finally win at home in Game 7. Are you more convinced or less convinced that the Clippers can come out of the West now that you've seen them play in this series?
Like you, I took the Clippers to come out of the West, and I'm less convinced than I was. The reality is you sort of look at the numbers here. Mavericks dominated points in the paint. They dominated second chance points. Kawhi Leonard was amazing, especially defensively, but the best player on the floor for the majority of the game was Luka Doncic. You add that up, that should be a Clippers loss. The problem is Luka had absolutely no help. I mean, the rest of his teammates played like, a bunch of bums. Every guy not named Luka, 5 of 25 from the three-point line. We know about the Utah Jazz that they have 2 things that the Mavericks don't. One, they've got depth. I mean, they are really good across the board, and they're also excellent defensively. So if the Clippers play in that next series the way that they did in this past series, I like how Vegas has slotted this thing, EK. I think Utah's probably a slightly nice favorite here for me.
All right, so if we look at the West, there's no LeBron James anymore, no Lakers, right? Denver's all banged up, even though they have the MVP. Clippers don't look as good. I'm with you. I'm a little less convinced that they're going to come out of the West. So if we're having a draft of the 4 teams left in the West, who are you taking first?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think I'm taking the Suns, in part because the 3 best teams are the Suns, the Clippers, and the Jazz of the 4 that remain. And the Suns don't have to play, at least right now, the Jazz or the Clippers. But it comes down to the same problem we've had every night on CBS Sports HQ, every night in the NBA, and that's the injury bug. You got Harden suddenly hurt for the Nets. I mean, every single team has been impacted to some degree in the regular season and largely the postseason by injuries. So I'm trying to guess that Chris Paul's going to be okay because they're a different team if he's not himself. But assuming that he can kind of play the way that he did at the end of that series, I like the Suns. In large part, I think their road's easier. And I think they've just got, like Utah, a lot of depth and a lot of skilled players who can come out there and couple that with some excellent defense. But all 3 of these teams are good enough.
You mentioned the injury bug. Atlanta takes advantage of the fact that Philly's banged up, and they walk into Philly and they get Game 1. You know, and Atlanta just seems like a team that's playing downhill right now. You know, they're there, right? I mean, you look at their record since and pick a date. They are a different team than they were the first month or 2 of the season. Watch out. I mean, I'm up here in New England, around New York, and everybody thought, oh, well, the Knicks are going to be. They just dismissed Atlanta, and Atlanta went out and absolutely spanked their bottoms red. What are we doing with Atlanta? How impressive was this, and how much of this is just simply Joel Embiid and the injury?
I mean, I think that's some of it, but I'm with you on Atlanta. I liked them against the Knicks. I did not bet on Clippers Mavericks because I had no idea, but I was very comfortably on Atlanta getting points. The Hawks are a different team since Nate McMillan took over, toward the end of the regular season. They're playing pretty good defensively. They're remarkable offensively. They're mostly healthy. Cam Reddish just hurt for now, but it's not like he's a critical player. DeAndre Hunter didn't play. John Collins stepped in. Bogdanovich hit big shots. This is a really, really good basketball team, and Trae Young, sort of like Luka on the other side, but he's got some help, is doing historical things. The number of points that he has in his first 6 playoffs games, a lot of the stats he's put up are pretty remarkable for anybody in the playoffs, but especially you go into the Garden, you win that series, you go to Philly, Embiid looks good, you win that game. The Atlanta Hawks aren't one of the teams we focused on as contenders at the start of the season, but I think at this stage of things, up 1-0, the way they play, the grit they've shown, they're a legitimate team, and they're a different team than they were over the course of the season. You really have to go back to February, even just the start of March, to assess who the Hawks are. And over that stretch, including the playoffs, they're one of the most dangerous teams in the NBA. All
right, when I say the Brooklyn Nets, there are a lot of different layers of that onion right now. First of all, James Harden's already out, right? And hamstrings, they don't generally heal overnight. I mean, that's not a day-to-day kind of injury traditionally. But when you look at the spread, the Nets are still favored without him, even though he's not going to play in Game 2. And they won Game 1 basically not knowing they weren't going to have him, and he didn't play at all in Game 1, essentially. What do you make of the fact that the Nets are still favored, and what do you make of Harden's injury going forward?
Yeah, I think the fact the Nets are still favored is the reality, unfair though it is for the rest of the NBA, that if they have 2 of those guys, and they're down to KD and Kyrie, right, they both have to remain healthy however long Harden is out. And you're right, EK, that is not a great injury, and it did not look great when he kind of pulled up lame. But if you have those 2 guys, you can beat anybody. You just can. And then I think the reality is how Vegas views the series. And I picked the Bucks to win it, but I think I wrote it at CBSSports.com. I have no idea. The old beat writer joke, prediction in 7, it translates to I have no idea. I think what Vegas is saying to you is, because if you believe in Milwaukee like I have, you believe in a couple things. One, you believe that Chris Middleton's going to play like an all-star, which he has over the course of this postseason and the regular season, but not in Game 1 against the Nets. You believe Drew Holiday is, defensively, maybe more than offensively, but part of a big three, and that those two guys take pressure not off Giannis, but the other role players are going to hit shots. That didn't happen in Game 1. Everybody, other than maybe Drew Holiday, kind of reverted to form. So Vegas is saying to you, we know what the Nets are. We don't know if the rest of the players not named Giannis are going to step up. I still believe Milwaukee and their shortcomings the last couple of years means there's some toughness in there. Didn't see it in Game 1. For that to come home, they better start showing it starting in Game 2.
Well done, Bill Reiter. Always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.